Everyone, welcome in Russell Fry, who has announced today that he is running for this Senate seat. A sad situation, Russell Fry. I saw you on the evening, or middle of the night, that we learned about Lizzie Graham's death, that you were talking about how devastating that was, and you shared your own personal story. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Senator Graham, I interned for him. I'm a child of, was in high school when 9/11 happened. And I remember seeing him campaign for the first time. I get elected to Congress and, what is remarkable to me and what a lot of people don't do is they take time to invest in new people. Senator Graham totally did that. He was team South Carolina all the way. And however he could be of help, but it was a good esprit de corps, if you will, between the two of us. We worked on legislation together, like the Logan Federico Act, to clean up violent crime in our streets. We worked together on South Carolina specific issues and funding and how to make sure that we got dollars back to our citizens here at home. We really had a great partnership and traveled with him. He's funny. He's authentically funny. Just a good, a good spirit. And we're going to miss him greatly.
What does it feel like to be running for his seat?
It's odd. He used to joke that he could see me in the seat at one point, and I think when he was campaigning, he said, "But not today, not today. I'm running for the seat now." But President Trump and I were talking, and at some point, you would be good in the Senate if you wanted to do it. Look, I think it's humbling in a way, and I think what Lindsey did better than most is that he really focused on issues that matter to South Carolinians, making sure that our towns and cities and ports have the resources that they need, helping and having excellent constituent service. These are the hallmarks of a good public servant. And really one that I've tried to model my congressional career after is, look, make sure that you take care of the ones that brought you to the dance, that you're focused on the issues that matter to them, that you give excellent constituent service, that you're in their corner. You're not afraid to kick over an anthill when it matters. These are the people who count on you to do that. And it's something that I've always strived to be like in that regard.
I noticed when you made your announcement official, you talked about affordability. That was a headline of your announcement. What have you been doing in Congress to make things more affordable for Americans?
Well, I think it starts with the one big, beautiful bill. Look, Americans were facing the largest tax increase that they would have ever seen, which would have been catastrophic. It would have been worse. It would have really made businesses close, families really struggle. I think highlighting that and advancing that, making sure that the focus was really on blue collar America, the average everyday Americans who get up every single day, put their boots on, go to work, enhance the child tax credit. These are all hallmarks. But on the other side, I think sound policy makes sense. Look, we don't build things in this country easily anymore. We don't have energy independence. We need to get back to that and do it in a way that makes sense. So things like permitting reform, making sure that we streamline the government process, getting energy deployable. These all lower costs for Americans every single day. And I think about the power bills that people have, the electric bills, the gas, the water. All these things are very easily solvable if we get Washington out of the way. And for too long, everything seems to be that comes out of Washington is this ivory tower of we know better than you. No, we need to return this power back to the states where it belongs. We need to return this power back to the people. We need to make sure that we build things again. This is a competitive environment from an energy perspective that we're racing against the clock against China. That's a scary prospect. And if we want to deliver the next generation, hand the keys of the car to the next generation in a better way than we inherited it, we've got our work cut out for us. But I'm committed to the job. I've got the energy to do the job. And we also have a record of advancing policies, not just talking about them, delivering bills to the president's desk, delivering bills to the governor's desk. We've done these things before, and we're equipped to do it now.
We, of course, are in the upstate. That's an area that you do not represent currently, and the Senate seat would cover us. So let's talk about what people in the upstate need to know about you and why you would be the right person in the job for them.
Look, I'm grounded in my faith. My faith guides me in everything that I do. It really is a call in public service that we are tasked, whether it's being in office or being a parishioner at your church, we are tasked with helping our neighbors and helping our communities. That's what we're tasked with doing. And look, while I don't live there, I would represent it in just the same way that I do this area of the state. When I first ran for Congress, the people of Chesterfield County, as an example, said, "How is a beach boy going to be able to help us in this rural community?" And if you go to Chesterfield County, you see the results. We've been able to bring them resources that they need for their sheriff's department, for their fire departments. We've been there every step of the way with them. And so, look, I'm Team South Carolina. The one hallmark that I have always enjoyed in working with the federal delegation is that we rode together. Issues that matter to the upstate, matter to the coast, matter to the Midlands. We all have to row together as a team. And that's the hallmark, I think, of good leadership, is that you don't have to be the flashy person or the person that gets the most press. You just have to be willing to roll up your sleeves the good old fashioned way and do the work. We're committed to do that. And I'm going to do that for the entire state of South Carolina as the next senator.
Lindsey Graham was kind of famous over the years, maybe not as much in the recent years as in previous years, as being sort of a guy that would go to the middle and would meet, the Democrats and try to come up with mutual bipartisan solutions. Are you that kind of guy too?
Look, we have bipartisan bills, but I'm a conservative first, and I have certainly a record of bipartisan work, but I'm a conservative first. Those principles guide me. And so as long as it doesn't betray my principles, we'll work with anybody. The country is too important to sit down and on the sidelines, but there's always an avenue. You take the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, which was a bill that we sent to President Trump's desk. It's pro-victim. It helps victims. It is pro-law enforcement. That was a bipartisan product that I led. And so there are avenues sometimes that you can really work with people. But look, I'm a conservative first. I'm a governing conservative. We're always going to tack to the right. We're always going to be that conservative voice for the country, for the state. And those are the principles that I'll adhere to in the Senate as well.
Annie Andrews, who is the Democrat you would face in the fall if you indeed carry away the primary, she polled against Lindsey Graham, and most recently, like just a couple of points behind him. Talk a little bit about how you would address the moderate voter, the person in the middle.
Look, I think it's important to focus on kitchen sink issues all the time. I grew up in a working class family. I know what it is to struggle for $1. I know what it is to not really to wonder what's going to happen next, and that kind of trepidation. That blue collar upbringing, that middle class upbringing, I think really shapes who I am. And look, I think you raise a very good point. Annie Andrews is going to be a formidable candidate for whoever is the nominee. And so the choice, I think, for voters is who can assemble the broadest coalition of people to make sure that we win that seat. We need to save the Senate. We need to make sure that we keep the majority in the Senate and not risk it on a candidate who might not be ready for that. It's very, very important for voters to think about this. Look, South Carolina is a Republican state. But there is no reason to believe that Democrats wouldn't invest in this state to try to put the state in play. And with the wrong candidate as our nominee, that will absolutely happen.
If and when, hopefully on your side, you hope that you will win. What would you do first? Like, what would be your first move as a senator?
Well, I think the first thing you got to do is hire a staff and figure out where the bathrooms are. But after that, look, I think legislation matters, policy matters. That's why you get elected, is that you want to impact the lives of everyday Americans. And so if Republicans, I think a lot of it depends on what the contours of Congress look like. But as Republicans, is advancing policies that really make life a little bit easier for Americans. People want that. They want to return that their elected officials are answerable, that they're accountable, that they're listening to them. Too often the Senate is viewed as a body that is not paying attention to the needs of their citizens. We want to reverse that curse. We want to reverse that trend. So from everything from government regulation to spending to eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in our government, passing the Save America Act, securing the border, keeping taxes low. These are all things that I would be fighting for. That's what the voters elected me to do in Congress. We're going to continue that and stand alongside President Trump. We've been a great ally of his since I first ran for Congress. We've been a voice for him in the Congress, pushing legislation. People want to return to legislating. They want to return to a little bit of a fight and vigor and energy. The Senate is often an older body. We would be a younger senator, but I think that actually helps us because we're able to do the work. We're able to move and maneuver and stand with President Trump to advance his agenda in the Senate.
When you think about Lindsey Graham's last effort being Ukraine, and his dedication to the Ukrainian situation and trying to help them win against Russia, where will you be when it comes to Ukraine? Like, what will your positioning be? Do you think you're going to be in alignment with where Senator Graham was, or are you going to have a different approach?
Look, I think my approach in Congress has been, look, where has our money gone? What has it gone to? It doesn't mean that we support the fight of the Ukrainian people. I think the question is what is America's obligation for involvement, and what does that look like? Ukraine, obviously, in a Time magazine article, there were allegations of fraud, and I think people are rightly concerned that their tax dollars are going to the pockets of people and not going as it intended. America's a very generous country. We want to help our allies and friends, but we want to make sure we're taking care of our people first. That is the hallmark of my terms in Congress so far, is making sure that we are looking out for the people who sent us there. Ukraine, obviously, there's a lot of ways that they're going through this, and time will tell where they ultimately land. But I've often had a little bit of reticence toward a blank check to Ukraine, because there has been fraud allegations. There has been documented statements by government officials about money going into the pockets of people over there. And so that is a concern, is where is our money actually going? And what is it going to its intended use? I think the American people deserve those answers.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more from Russell Fry. All right, continuing on Russell Fry, let's talk a little bit about Russia, the threat of the Russians to Europe. How are you feeling about the international role the U.S. is playing and trying to hold that back? And Ukraine is an example, but there are other things going on as well.
Look, the United States has always stood. We've been a vital part of NATO. I think what President Trump is doing, and what I think we should demand and expect, is that Europeans also take a firmer stance in their security, that they take a larger role in their security. I think President Trump, people complained about it at first, but it actually really worked well to the point where NATO said, President Trump was right to demand that European countries pay more toward their mutual security. They've just upped the ante again. And so I think, look, the United States, as a NATO ally, that's as a partner in NATO, is hugely critical. But Europe also has an obligation to defend themselves, to make sure that they have adequate resources to block rogue states like Russia, Iran, North Korea, China. That joint security is really what is going to deter bad actors.
Iran is a continuing problem, and the gas prices are back over $4 a gallon again. Talk a little bit about how the U.S. should be handling the situation. Are you in alignment with President Trump at this moment?
Look, there's no question that President Trump inherited this problem with Iran potentially obtaining a nuclear weapon. Putting a stop to that, I think, is of chief importance, and he's done that. Now, obviously, we're still engaged in hostilities, but making sure that Iran is stable, taking away their appetite for attacking cargo ships, Western culture, our allies in the region, that is key. And look, when there was a brief détente, gas prices fell. On the domestic side, I think it's really important that we get government out of the way, that we allow for expanded leasing in operations and drilling, because the more self-reliant we are, the more oil and natural gas that we can put onto the market, the better it is for the world, for world stability. Let us be the exporters of energy. That is huge. If we can do that, we really take away the sting of what is going on there, and we really provide relief at the pump for our citizens. But we got to get government out of the way. We've done a lot of that already this Congress, but there's more to do to make sure that we are that we are an exporter of energy, that we have sufficient energy for our own citizens.
Congressman, you are obviously a sitting congressman. You hold your seat at this very moment as you run for Senate. Is that the way it's going to stay? Or are you going to hold on to your seat until you see how things work out?
Well, look, we're in this. We're in this for the long term. I mean, this is certainly a terrible situation with the passing of Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
We're ready to take this mantle up and make sure that we protect the Senate, and that we're going to be South Carolina's aggressive and conservative voice in the Senate, much the same way that Lindsey did, and taking care of South Carolinians, but certainly with a little bit of energy and vigor that I think our citizens deserve and want.
I think Graham's office has a pretty good reputation for constituent service. Can you talk a little bit about some ways that you've served constituents through your current office that are kind of standout moments or memories that the little stuff that happens that makes a difference for families?
There was a gentleman. I went to church one day in Dillon County, and the pastor said, "I want you to meet somebody." And I walked over, and there was a man in a wheelchair, and he started crying. I'd never met him before. He started crying when he saw me, and he couldn't talk. He was permanently paralyzed from a bad car accident. And it was a touching moment. And the pastor said, "You helped this gentleman. He called your office, and you helped him when no one else would. And not only with disability that he was entitled to receive, did we get that? We got him back pay, which actually saved his house from being foreclosed on, saved maybe arguably his family and his marriage. And it just was a touching thing about the power of real good constituent service is that, I remember when this came in, I said, all right, we're going to jump on this. But I'd never met the guy.
Yeah.
But to see those tears stream down his face and just to know like that you had this like phenomenal impact on somebody's life, even in their darkest moment. That's why we do what we do. It's the unsexy stuff that doesn't get a lot of press, but really for people back home, it means something. And in this man's life, it meant everything.
Talk to me about you, the man who took down Tom Rice, who had voted to impeach President Trump. You got the Trump endorsement and you won that race, a 5-term incumbent that you took down. You were not in the moment holding the Trump endorsement. Is that frustrating to you?
No, not at all. Look, everyone understands and knows that I work very well with President Trump. We talk routinely. We are friends. We work well with each other, and so I'm proud to be on the team of the Trump presidency, of the Trump administration, and in every which way in the House, we have helped navigate and deliver wins for the Trump agenda and really for the American people. This is what the American people ran on: secure the border, cut our taxes, get the economy humming again. And there are some. So I've always been proud to stand with President Trump, and it has been a good partnership, a good friendship. And look, regardless of what happens, we're happy to be on the team, continuing to do the good things that the president is focused on, because that's what the American people expect. They want us to row together, and we're going to row together as a team to make sure that we deliver for the American people.
But come on, you don't want the Trump endorsement?
Everyone wants the Trump endorsement, but what I like more than any endorsement is knowing that we are helping advance the agenda. That we're not talking about it, we're not sitting around and pretending and cloaking ourselves in the name Trump. That we are advancing the agenda that is going to have an outsized impact on the American people. That's why I wake up every day. That's why I do what I do. That's what gives me excitement, is that you can really change the lives of our citizens, not just for the next election, but the next generation.
What would you like to see happen in terms of the decision making to go into this race? What happened in your own mind as you were kind of contemplating this? I mean, you had the weekend, I guess, to kind of reflect on it. Was that the key? Like, what was the moment that you said, I gotta run?
I don't know if there was a clear moment where it switched on. I think it was a lot of a prayer. It was a lengthy discussion with my family. It was certainly talks and encouragement by a lot of people. But at some point I said, look, this country is important. The future of this country is important. And who is best equipped to start on day one and deliver, and not just talk about delivering, but actually delivering for our state, for our citizens, for the American people. And if not now, when? We have an obligation as Christians to help our people, to help our community, to help our neighbors. And this is an opportunity that I think I'm called to do, is that in an old Boy Scout way, is that you're supposed to leave your campsite better than you found it. I'm an Eagle Scout. And so I look at this in the same vein as it's important for anybody, whether you're in public service or not, to leave your country, leave your state, leave your community, your church, just a little bit better than you found it. And if you've done that, then you've done your job. And that's what's exciting about it.
Is there one thing you could name that you would completely vote differently than Lindsey Graham on?
Well, look, I mean, Lindsey was very focused on foreign affairs, and I'm not saying those aren't important. They are very important. But I have always enjoyed domestic policy. Energy, for example, I serve on the Energy Committee. That is crucial. That's crucial as we look in South Carolina to what's going to happen with nuclear. Making sure that we all remember V.C. Summer vividly and how it was a boondoggle for the state. I remember that because I was in the State House, and I never thought that I would understand how complicated this stuff actually is, but it is. And there are so many ways in which government bureaucrats kind of get in the way, and it's not for safety. We're sacrificing efficiency and not even helping safety. And so there's some bipartisan bills that I'm working on now that would streamline some of that stuff. Some of them just came out of committee. I think that's really big for South Carolina. Look, so much of our energy is provided by nuclear. Nuclear is a wave. And I think I would love to see a nuclear renaissance, not only in South Carolina, but this country, that really help drive affordable power back to our citizens, back to the small businesses, the families that count on them. But the only way that we get there is by getting government out of the way. You don't have to sacrifice safety for that. You just have to make sure that you have smart government. And that's some of the things that we're working on right now.
Interestingly, you bring up power because data centers have been huge issues around the upstate. I'm sure you're seeing that on the coast as well. Everywhere around the country, it's hot. Is this an issue that's kind of local, or do you think there needs to be some federal investigation, plan, program?
Well, I think it's both, right? We know that China obviously is trying to limit our advancement in AI and things like that. But we know that China is trying to block us on everything because they want that competitive cutting edge. But I think locals absolutely have a say here. I think if, as President Trump said, if data centers need to be self-sufficient on their power, they can't be taking power and putting it on the backs of hardworking Americans. I think that's the real rub here, and why people are skeptical. One of the biggest reasons why people are upset sometimes in their communities, they feel like that their power is going to be taken away, and that their bills are going to go up. That's just unacceptable.
Darlene Graham is not officially in the race as we tape this. She does have the Trump endorsement if she runs. How have you approached her? Did you in any way check in with her or say, hey, I'm going to run? I mean, do you know her personally?
I've talked to her. She's a wonderful lady, very nice, very sweet. Obviously, she's got a compelling story. Lindsey helped raise her when their parents died, and she's been a big part of Lindsey's life. And so we have talked. We have talked about this. I don't ultimately know what she will do. What I do know and what I can tell you today is that we're prepared to be the next senator. We're prepared for the next generation of fights that will occur to make sure that this country is on good footing. We're prepared to deliver results. We understand the legislative process. We understand what's at stake for our country and our children, and that's why I'm in this race right now.
Russell Fry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
There's something comforting about experience.
What?
It prepares you, makes you wiser, ready for anything. That's why 3 decades later, I still love to keep you informed. Your trust is everything.
Watch Amy Wood, on 7 News. Weekdays at 4, 5, and 6 p.m.
We want to get to that immediately.
Yeah. So,